Last week, I was at a conference in Memphis. It was a church conference. It was a great time. I don't know if you've ever been to Memphis or not. I'd never been to Memphis before. Fun town. Best ribs of my life in Memphis. And I've eaten some ribs. I've cooked some ribs. And I'm telling you what, best ribs I've ever had. The thing I like about Memphis barbecue, right, is not that it's got the dry rub, but kind of got a lot of paprika, which might be a little more technical than some of you are used to, but that's how it is. But they put the rub on everything, right? So you order like your barbecue, right? Your standard barbecue, of course, is like, your pork. And this is Georgia, so that's the way it is. If you're from Texas, you just have to let it slide. You got the pork, and then you got the beans, and you got the slaw. Well, they put the rub on the beans, and they put the rub on the slaw, so you kind of get like that whole flavor. Really enjoyed it. It was a great conference as well. You can tell I kind of travel with my stomach. But the conference was really great. Learned a lot of neat stuff. One of the best parts about it, though, was who I was with. I got to go with some friends of mine from the church that I served at in Colorado. It was on the south side of Denver. I was there in 1999 and 2000. And that was a while ago. I had hair back then. And a lot's happened since then. But we've stayed connected. I love them. They love me. And when I went there and did an internship, and then finished up my education, and after graduation, I wanted to go back there because it was fantastic. Had a wonderful experience, loved the people, loved living in Denver. It was great. But it didn't happen. And I had to go somewhere else. And I didn't know where, and I didn't know what was going to happen. The place I ended up going to was Roswell. That was my first church here in Georgia. And I was there for 5 years. Had a great experience. Met some wonderful people. Had a lovely time. Love them to death. But God had something new in mind. And I didn't exactly know what. So I loved them. And I left them too. And then I started a mission church. That was what happened after. And that was fun. Loved them. Had a great experience. It was time for that to end too. And I'm not leaving here. That's not where this is going. So don't worry about that. You can see some faces like, what? But it is to say that when the disciples are on top of this mountain, and they have a pretty good gig, and it's time to go, I get it. I mean, think about it, right? They get to be alone with Jesus. Kind of a cool thing, right? Kind of sounds worth doing. Moses is there. Moses, kind of a big guy. Moses, pretty cool. Elijah is there. Kind of another big guy, right? God is like speaking, using actual words. Wouldn't that be nice? Pretty sweet deal. I can understand why they're like, you know what, let's build some houses here. Let's hang out. Let's stay for a while. This is great. Who wouldn't think that? Sounds very appealing to me. But think about what would have happened if they did that. Right? If they just hung out with Jesus on top of a mountain. And then they got old. And then they died. And that was it. There would be no crucifixion. There would be no resurrection. There would be no Acts of the Apostles. The church growing from just a couple people to thousands and then millions. There wouldn't be this. We wouldn't be here. Christianity would not exist if they had just decided, this is wonderful, let's just stay on top of this mountain and hang out until we die. They had to come off the mountain. For what they didn't know. They didn't know what was coming. I mean, Jesus had kind of talked about it. Interestingly, this is right after the moment where Jesus says he's got to go die, and Peter says, no, don't do that. So they don't even really understand what's coming next. Just like in each of those churches I was at that I loved. I didn't really know what was coming next. But there was something new that God had in mind. And so, whenever God calls us to leave something good, it's always for something better, but it's hard to leave something good. That's why it's good, right? I mean, most of us don't have like a lot of really terrible things in our lives. We might have a couple. But the growth and the change that God is trying to bring about in us often doesn't involve giving up terrible stuff. We all know what the terrible stuff is that we have to give up, right? Eat more fruits and vegetables. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't rob from people, stuff like that. Okay, that's the easy stuff. All right? But that's also probably not a whole heck of a lot of your time. Maybe you do steal stuff a lot. I don't know. But probably not. Instead, if we're going to experience some of the better stuff that God has in mind, the stuff we got to give up is usually good. It's the good things that we have to give up to get the great. And that's hard because it's good. But if these guys hadn't given up something that was pretty good, they wouldn't have gotten great, and we wouldn't be here. Now that's true of us, each of us as individuals as we look at our own lives, but it's also true of churches. I mean, churches, I just went to a whole week-long conference, right? The churches, we don't like to give up stuff. Sort of the standard church response is, we need to do something new. That's great, Pastor. Usually that's how it goes. That's great, Pastor. I love that. Just don't take away the things I like, and we'll be fine. That's kind of how it goes. Sure, we can add stuff. That's perfect. But just don't take away what we've got. Well, sometimes we have to give up the good to get the great. And the fact of the matter is that there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much any of us can do. We only have so much energy. And I've just kind of asked around, just kind of casual conversation. Because, what could if we needed to do something new, something different, something that took a lot of energy, something that took a lot of your time, effort, what could we give up? And the look I've always gotten is this. Nothing. The answer is always nothing. There's nothing we can stop doing, so we can start something. Well, some things have to change. All right? And if we're going to grow, it's going to take time, effort, energy in new directions. All right? And if you're new and you're wondering, well, what's wrong with this place? I got to do all these things new. The problem is there's nothing wrong. That's the problem. I like you. I like this church. Things are good. That's what makes it so hard. We might have to give up some good things to get great things. And I don't know what. I can't decide it. I can't say. But, lest I should fall into the trap of being too general, let's put some nuts and bolts on that. Let's make it personal, shall we? What if you had to give up singing in the choir? Ooh, I don't like that. That's not so cool. What if you had to give up making meals for people? No, I know, right? Ow! That stings. I've had to give up must ministries or teaching Sunday school. What if I had to give up preaching? What would I do with myself? I don't know. But this is where they intersect, see? This is where the personal and the church come together. Because these guys had a really good thing going. They were on top of a mountain with Jesus, and Moses, and Elijah. They had them all themselves. That's pretty great. I wouldn't want to give that up. But they did. And because they did, God made a movement that changed the world and is still changing you and me 2,000 years later. And so it's worth asking the question, what will I give up? What will we give up? And as we do that, recognizing that it's both personal and corporate, and as we do that knowing that the only reason that we would give it up is knowing that God has something better in mind. Amen.